report on.
The people's voice. Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the people's voice. I am Trey Evans, and I am the people's voice. Thank you again for checking into the podcast this week. It is greatly appreciated. As always, I like to start off with thank you. So let me once again say thank you to everyone who has been listening to the podcast, everyone who has subscribed to the podcast, and for everyone who has shared the podcast. And to those of you who may be new to the podcast, welcome. Thank you for listening, and we appreciate you carving out some time out of your day to check into our podcast. So thank you. Today, I want to talk about used car scams. And, this, just like every other subject I, talk about is, one that I want to get out the message to assist individuals who may not be aware of some of the scams that are associated with buying used cars, right? Because, particularly in the last 3 years, clearly during the pandemic and post-pandemic, many people began to buy cars. Not that car sales were not already high, but the need and the want for cars, particularly for those who have moved further out away from their former jobs, and many people that were working from home, they started to buy cars. So used car scams have been on the rise, and this is not anything new to the economy or new to our world, right? Used car scams have been around since since cars have been being manufactured. But today, what I wanted to do was just to cover kind of like the top 10 used car scams that are prevalent today. And again, use this as a warning and a history lesson to, a lesson for those who, again, may not be aware of the scams, those of you who may have been victim of the scams. And, in any event, I think it'll be great information and something that I think will benefit everyone as we have the conversation today. So, I do a definition. For this one, I don't have to, look up an official definition. Basically, a used car scam, and this is my definition, is when you go to purchase a car, okay, and particularly a used car, and the person that is presenting the car to you is not forthcoming with the actual information regarding the car. They provide, false information about the state of the car, the condition of the car, and then many times for those who are victims of those scams, what ends up happening is that your money is taken. You take possession of the car, and then, down the line, you find out that the car, the way it was represented, is not what it was. And, concerning and scary is that, many laws don't even protect you from some of these scams. It's really a buyer beware, do all of your research type of market, if you will. And, the recourse for getting your money back or even getting officials involved many times becomes a task on its own. But let me go through these scams. And, I'm sure that as I talk about this, some of you may be able to relate. Some may have heard stories. But again, I think it's a great education. So let's get started with that. So what I did was I pulled like a top 10 list of current car scams as of today. And so one of the first scams, and this is a very heavily reported scam, And matter of fact, the FBI has even been alerted to this type of scam. That's the scam where it's the must sell now scam. That's what they call it. And that's when whether you're on Craigslist or you're on eBay or you're on, one of these other sites that sometimes talk about, you're on these sites and the sellers say that they have affiliation with other sites to basically promote their credibility. But a lot of times it's false because they have no relationship with many of these sites. But sometimes when you're looking for these cars and you're looking online, you'll see the must sell. And the must sell is when they claim that they're selling the car now at a steep discount because they need to make room for inventory. And, they've got to get it off the lot as soon as possible or get it out of their possession. And so they claim that they're offering this huge discount. Now, the problem with that is that many times that they're getting it, the deep discount is because basically they know the car is worthless, right? So if you can get 50% on something that is worth 0%, that's when you see these ridiculous, huge discounts, where it's like car is normally retailed for $25,000, but today it's a must sell, so I'll sell it for $12,500. And you're like, wow, why is it so cheap? Well, what ends up happening is that many times once you purchase that car, again, depending on the state that you're in, that car, once it's sold and off the lot, you are now the possessor of it, and whatever repairs needed is your responsibility. So that's one of the first scams. It's called the must sell now scam. And like I said, many states don't have what they call lemon laws. And basically, lemon laws are if a car is sold to you, it can be, depending on the state that you purchased the car in, you are protected for a predetermined amount of time that you can take that car back and get your money. And I'm reading here from J.D. Power and just give a definition on how lemon laws work. Federal, and I'm reading directly, federal and state consumer protection laws have existed for a long time. The main purpose is basically, as I said, to hold the manufacturer or the seller accountable for their goods. If the car cannot be repaired or a defect is too severe, then you as the consumer, you can go back and demand a refund or a replacement or basically give me another vehicle. But again, this is on a state-by-state basis because it states here currently only 7 states have used car lemon laws. That's Connecticut, California, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New York, New York, New Jersey, and New Mexico. And even in those states, it's very difficult to have those laws applied because you really have to demonstrate a serious you have to basically be able to demonstrate that you were truly defrauded, and that number one, you did all of your due diligence to make sure that these that the car was what it was presented to be, and then number two, that this person was truly the seller was truly trying to defraud you. So it's difficult to prove that because you have to have all of your paperwork in order, communications, things of that nature. And then let me stop and say, I am not a lawyer. This is not advising from a legal perspective. This information is for consumption and for debate. And I have to say this when I talk about these various topics because, there are regulations when you do crack open these microphones. You just can't jump on here and say anything without giving that caveat. So, but getting back, as I was saying, so lemon laws are designed to protect you in those cases where a car is sold to you at a discounted rate. They say they must sell now. That's one of the first scams. And then the car breaks down. If you can document that, particularly in those 7 states that I mentioned, then you have a better chance of possibly getting your money back or getting a replacement refund, a replacement vehicle if that car is not up to the standards that you and the seller discussed. It also goes on here to say on the JD Power site that vehicles can be sold in any condition, and it's the buyer's responsibility, as I mentioned, to determine its state before signing the contract. And again, that's what I was saying about those lemon laws. This can involve a visual inspection, test drive, and then you can, if you have a mechanic or someone local, you can also take your vehicle down there to have it checked. Obviously, there are some issues that you can't detect, right? That you doing a visual inspection, you're not going to determine that, for instance, that your alignment is off, right? Unless you are able to go underneath the vehicle. So there's certain things that you're not going to be able to detect, but the seller is obligated. But again, you can go for days without noticing that there might be an issue, right? That it might just be a situation where they've, modified the vehicle to the point that it's going to ride smoothly for a couple of days, which oftentimes happens. And then, when the incident occurs, it's, usually maybe a week or 2 weeks later. Because you have to keep in mind the seller isn't obligated to sell the vehicle in perfect condition. And, when it's a used car, there's an expectation that it's not going to be perfect, right? It's a used car for a reason. I mean, someone or a few people had it before you got to it. So there is that level of expectation that you have to have when you purchase the car. And so that means that new or unnoticed issues may not be, as I said before, applicable to lemon laws. So it really takes a lot to be able to make that argument when it comes to states that have what they call lemon laws that are supposed to protect buyers when there is a transaction for a vehicle and that vehicle does not live up to the standards that everyone involved in the transaction thought it would be. So let me get back. I should have did that in the beginning. I should have gave the lemon laws, but it doesn't matter. We're in it, so we're moving around. No problem. Okay, so that was number 1, the must sell now scam. That's number 1. And then number 2, the third party scam. So this is where, basically, and as I stated before, where you might meet a seller online. And listen, everybody's selling something online now, right? Somebody might DM you on your Instagram saying, hey, I have a used car for sale if you want to buy it. But what they do is, and I kind of mentioned this in the beginning, they talk about they have an affiliation. So they'll mention a name like, we're affiliated with CarMax. So we're affiliated with eBay Motors, but they have no affiliation to these sites. So they say they might be affiliated with Carvana, but they really have no affiliation to these sites. And what ends up happening is that, it builds credibility from from the consumer standpoint, because they go, oh, well, this guy says, or this company, this dealership says they're with, eBay Motors, CarMax, Carvana, and then you think that you're going to be able to get a quality used car. But again, we have to be very diligent when we are purchasing things online, and particularly to do our research. And many times they'll even create fake 100 number, 800 numbers, toll free numbers. They'll create websites that almost look similar to some of the more popular used car platforms. They'll maybe put their logos on the website, but again, this is a third party scam. You have to do your research when it comes to this. You just can't go on the fact that someone says that they're affiliated with XYZ to ensure that you are not scammed. Again, we are talking about used car scams that have been highlighted in a great abundance, particularly as used car sales have skyrocketed, particularly during the pandemic. Number 3 is the gift card scam. And I never heard of this one before, so I thought this was interesting. This is where basically scams targeting used car buyers is a request for for gift cards as payment. Now, if someone is selling you a car and they say to you, you can pay us with a gift card or several gift cards, you definitely want to make sure. I mean, and again, I'm just, from my perspective, if someone tells me that I can pay for a car, just go and get $4,000 worth of gift cards and we'll call it even. That for me is a red flag. So you definitely want to avoid that. And I just don't even know how else I can get into that one. But when I read it, I was like, gift card scam. Like who would pay for a car via a gift card? But that is another scam because, a lot of times it's untraceable, right? Once that money is put on that card, unless there's again a super deep investigation, which a lot of times these facilities, these government entities are not going to do that. The likelihood of you getting your money back after you pay via gift card is, slim to none. The next one is the wire transfer scam, which kind of works similarly to the gift card scam, and that's where basically you have money wired to an account, and then once that money is deposited, the account is closed, the money's gone, and then you're unable to get your money back. So be careful with that as well. Then you have the purchase protection plan scam, which I think many people may know of. This is where, companies will tell you that there's a vehicle purchase protection, and that basically they can protect you against any loss of money that will come as a result of your purchase. But many times they are not backed by anything, right? It's just give me your money, and then once the purchase goes south, so does the individual or the company that's offering the purchase protection plan. So be very aware of that. And basically how that works is they fake a relationship with companies that offer protection plan services. So again, they'll say that they have a protection plan through XYZ Corporation. They have a protection plan through Ford or through Honda, and so on and so forth. But there's no affiliation to that company. So be aware of that. Curb stoning. I thought this one was interesting. So, and I've seen this before. So curb stoning is basically, well, let me read exactly what it is, and then I'll tell you, from my perspective. So this practice involves luring prospective buyers to an open space that's not associated with businesses or residents, like a parking lot or curbside of the road. And then the goal is to sell damaged cars or salvaged cars to buyers who think they're getting a good deal. The cars are dressed up, obviously, cosmetically, but they have a ton of flaws. They're missing very important parts, working parts for a car. So you want to be very careful about that. So curb stoning, and I've seen this. Like I said, this is the guy that's standing on the corner saying, "Hey, used cars for sales," where he's swinging the sign left to right. You might see some signs posted up. In many states, these type of sales are illegal. But again, you know, if an individual is in a predicament where they need a car, sometimes they might overlook some of the what I would consider the basics on receiving a car, and that would be making sure all the paperwork is in order, contract, title, things of that nature. Sometimes they'll forego that because they just need a vehicle. Well, this is where the scam takes place, so please be careful about that. That's called curb stoning. Title washing is another one. This is where they take the title and basically it conceals that the car was recovered from a fire or from a storm or some type of flooding, things of that nature. And so what they do is they basically transfer salvage. They transfer the title and make it appear, or I should say. So what they do is in states where they do this this erases all of the information from the title, right? They take all of because, you might not know, when you do a title search, you can go back in the records to see when that car was in an accident, who was the last previous, or how many previous owners were before that, origination of the vehicle, all of that information. So what they do is they wash all that information off. They basically create a fraudulent title, and then that title is given to you as if that's the actual title of the car. When the state issues a new title, the salvaging brand basically disappears, and then the seller often tries again in another state. So basically, they can duplicate that process over and over again by washing a title, creating a new one, and then selling another junk car. So be aware of that. And again, a lot of this is done through diligence in terms of asking questions, but also going through your proper channels, your motor vehicles, your DMV services, things of that nature. The odometer fraud, I think everyone is familiar with that. That's basically where odometer readings are pulled back. So you might have a car with 250,000 miles on it, but they'll change the odometer, and the odometer will read that it's only 100 or 75,000 miles, and you think you're getting a great deal, but you're actually getting a car that has a lot of mileage on it, which means again that many issues can come from that. Cars, these days 250,000 miles is very capable, but if you think you're getting a deal or you're getting a steal on a car because it's low mileage, many times, especially not many times, but with some used cars, especially if you're not dealing with a credible dealership, that might be a result of odometer fraud. So here it states that the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration estimates that over 450,000 cars are sold with manipulated odometers every year. Wow, that's amazing. This basically costs about $1 billion in annual losses to consumers. So you have to be aware of that. Now, how do you find out about that? This goes back to title. When you do a title search, again, if it's not coming up with legitimate information, then you are not getting the vehicle that you just paid for. So the odometer reading is also part of the title when it exchanges from owner to owner. So let's be aware of that as well. And then last but not least, I want to talk about the last scam I wanted to talk about was the deposit fraud scam. And so this is where the seller lists the car for less than what it's worth to attract an eager buyer, similar to the buy now scam. And then when the buyer contacts the fraud, they ask for a deposit so you could take the car. So they say, hey, listen, you can come pick the car up today, but I do need a 25% deposit for the car. And so you go, the car is 10,000, you go put down 2,500, or you deposit 2,500 into an account. And then what ends up happening is that when the buyer contacts the fraudster, they ask for the deposit to take the car off the market. And then presumably what ends up happening is that because you're so eager to get the car, the buyer leaves the deposit, and then all of a sudden the seller disappears and you don't hear from them anymore. So that's the deposit fraud scam. That's when you really want a car, or a person really wants a car. They say, hey, I'm gonna take it off the market today so nobody else can contact me about it, but I need a deposit. You deposit the money, and then once the money is deposited, you never hear from the seller again. So that's a deposit fraud. So, those are just a quick list of some of the frauds. I mean, there's a ton of them out there, but I kind of just wanted to get that information out because I know that many people are still buying used cars. Travel season is coming up. Travel via plane is very expensive, so many people are choosing to drive, and please be aware of the scams that are out there. So what are some of the things you can do to avoid the scams? And I kind of talked about them as I was giving the list instead of waiting to the end, but here's a list of just things you want to keep in mind when you're buying a used car. Always listen to your gut. Listen to your gut. I'm a gut guy. If it doesn't feel right, I'm walking. Like, I thank you for your time, and I'm out. So listen to your gut. If it doesn't feel right, somebody's talking too fast, they don't want you to look under here, there's no need to check under the hood, it's all good. Thank you for your time and get up out of there. Try to deal with local sellers. This is a big one because many times, especially now, many people want to purchase over online. And, I'm a touchy-feely type of guy. That sounds creepy, but I meant that in terms of purchases, things that I buy, right? I am a touch-see guy. I got to touch it and see it before especially major purchases. There's no way that and I'm not in any way talking badly about it, but I can't buy a car online. I am a go in, touch it, drive it before I can purchase it type of person. So I would strongly encourage that you do that as well. If you're buying a car locally, set up a time that you can go see the car, that you can meet with the individual before you start to send any money or any payments, things of that nature. Research the buyer. Again, Google is and I shouldn't say Google, online searches is a great tool. And many people use it for, frivolous activity, in my opinion, but in a case such as this, you research who you're buying the car from to see if they're legitimate or not. Research the car again, Carfax and other online databases. You can do title searches. You can do VIN searches to kind of see the history of the car to make sure that you're confirming it is what this person says it is. Never trust a seller that says that they're backed by any third party dealer. Always be very cautious of that. Like I said before, the third party scam is alive and well, and many people will insist that that is the case, and many times it's not. So do your research. And then never pay in advance. And we talked about that as well. Don't pay in advance. Always go see the vehicle in person before you start to send payments or even get to the point where you're talking about money to move or I should say giving money to secure the purchase. So those are my discussions for today regarding car scams. I hope, as always, this was enlightening. Do me a favor. If you are getting the information and this information is of relevance and importance, please feel free to subscribe to the podcast. You can also reach me on our socials at I am Trey Evans. Also, you can reach us at Trey Be Talking on Instagram for comments and any recommendations. It'd be greatly appreciated. But that is my time for today. So as always, dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans, the people's voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute.
I am Trey Evans, the people's voice.